Coming up, Worry Week continues. We focused on Mikal Bridges in episode 1, but what would be the most logical second concern for Brooklyn? Ben Simmons. What if he just ends up being bad, injured, subpar, mediocre? What will it mean to the Brooklyn Nets season and the future with that seismic contract still on the books? We dive in next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie. He's the owner-operator of DFSR for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast and your New Jersey Devils on the Devils Puck Luck podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen today. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And remind you, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tech hat with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. And we also promise you, Doug, the Worry Week. We said it would continue all week long, and that's exactly where we are today, focusing in on one Ben Simmons, who has of late been receiving a lot of gym hype around the fitness, the shot, and what it's all going to look like. But what's the other side of that spectrum, Doug?
Well, yeah. Okay. So we've been talking a lot about Simmons. We've actually, if you've noticed, if you listen to our offseason stuff, Simmons has been a crazy through line through so many different episodes because of what Ben Simmons represents. Like when he's healthy, Ben Simmons represents sort of like the perfect piece for a lot of teams to some degree, and specifically for this Nets team with the way they're created and sort of need to have some, initiation and just what they needed, sort of like backup center, like all this different stuff that they need, like on ball, just defense, everything, right? They need them pretty bad. And like you said, it's been a summer of positivity around Ben Simmons, around, a lot of guys talking about him specifically. He's been hanging out and with a bunch of other guys from the team. And we get the gym pictures, which those come every summer for Simmons. So whatever, and I think we've been like in a really, really positive place with Simmons. Yeah. And so as a reminder, during the worst case week, we have been overwhelmingly positive around this Nets team this whole offseason. But with Simmons, there is still massive concern here. And the concern goes well beyond just like, can he return to 2019 levels? Like this goes to, could this contract sink the organization for another season after this one? And if we're just playing out the thought tree here around different ways it could go, or just the outcome tree, like there's a lot of ways that can go that way. And this season is going to be really I think the season is the most defining of his whole career easily. Going into the season, that's a lot of pressure.
And we've talked about this, about how, the new CBA, right? And it softened some things. But as we've said before, and fans or people around the league, even as soon as the new CBA went into effect, it was, here's contracts that aren't nearly as bad as you thought they were. Guess what? It's still really bad if you're paying $40 million to a guy that is not performing for you. And so much of the context that we put Ben Simmons into is he doesn't have to live up to $40 million a year. That's setting a bar that he may never reach again. But we've consistently set a positive narrative around what he will be this year. What if it's like the last two seasons? What if it's injuries? What if it's when he's out there on the floor, he doesn't get past some of the key pitfalls that we've seen? That $40 million contract, we'll talk about his on-court stuff here more in a second. That $40 million, it already hurt them this offseason. They could have done different things with that much more cap freedom. And then next offseason, when we're talking about Nicholas Claxton needing a new contract, right? When we're talking about, yes, you may move off of Spencer Dinwiddie. Okay, fine. But if you want to go add to what could be a great season for some other players and a positive year for this organization, all of a sudden you go, nope, one more year before we can start making different decisions, because there's still going to be an organization that wants to stay under the luxury tax.
Yeah, there's no way around it. Like he needs to play himself. He needs to play himself to a point where it's like he's at least half as good as a contract or something like that, right? He like when you make as much money as him, you can, for this to have any hope, right? Like he doesn't need to play all the way to be a $40 million a year guy. I actually don't think that's probably Well, I guess anything's possible, but it's far from probable.
Yeah.
But if he can get to like a $15 million a year guy, then we're talking about having some paths to exit or some paths to like something else can happen.
Right.
But if it goes off the rails early and often here, like he's going to be on the team next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about like some of the different ways that can look here probably pretty shortly. It's not going to take, you don't need to be overly imaginative to try to figure out some of the ways that this can go. But just on a high level, the problem with Simmons here is that like the value has gone so low at this point that I think we're often in the mold of, when we talk about him, we're often in the mold of, okay, nowhere to go but up, right? And that's good. Like we should be in that. We should be talking about it that way because there is literally nowhere we go but up. This has been it was a disastrous season this year to end it for sure. Injury stuff, okay, the injuries can still be a disaster. Like it's not anti-Simmons to say that. But when you add it into sort of the stuff that happened the season before, by his own admission, right,
Mm-hmm.
about things that happen both from an injury level and from just like sort of a mental and emotional level that he was going through, there's incredible risk that things don't really pull out of this career tailspin that he's in. And the Nets, it doesn't like need to happen for him, but it is a massive issue for the Nets if it doesn't. Like it's to the point, we go back and listen to what we talked about Mikal Bridges and how important he is for this team on like on just sort of a macro level and a micro level, what they need him for. Simmons is not at that level, but because of the money, it's really close. And you just cannot, it was hard enough in the old CBA and forget about it with the new one. You cannot get out of situations where you're a $40 million a year guy isn't at least decent, right?
Yeah.
Like after that, like if you're not decent, if you're only decent, it's going to be so hard. If you're not that, it's impossible. And Simmons is right on that precipice right now. And it's a critical time for him. And it's really critical for the organization as much as it is for him.
Well, and don't forget, and this is such a different level of spectrum. Joe Harris was making $20 million, and it became a problem for the money that was attached to him and the lack of production that you could entrust with him when it came to perimeter shooting. A one singular type of player that needed to do one specific thing for a roster became untenable over the course of his contract as it got towards the back end. Coming up here in a second, I'll touch back in on another key point when it comes to how the contract impacts the Brooklyn Nets, and then we'll discuss on court and what it looks like for Ben Simmons to be only trending upward.
All right, before we get to that, going to tell you about our good friends over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs has got the stretch khaki short. It's designed to fit slimmer. It looks good through the thigh, gives you that sculpted look. I'm wearing the Bird Dogs right now. These things have changed my shorts game for like the short term and for the long term. I'm just not wearing anything but the Bird Dogs since they came in the mail. I think it was back in May or June. I would probably count on two hands the amount of days that I've gone without wearing the Bird Dogs. And that's just because laundry or some other life things got in the way. These things are the most comfortable shorts I've ever worn in my life. Point stop. You can go out with them for night in the town. You can get into like athletic stuff if you want to do it. They're really just made for you to do everything and everything in between when it comes to shorts. They got pants too. They sent the new pants in the mail as well. The wife loves the way that these things look. They're going to throw in a white tech hat right now, but you have to go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, or you just enter the promo code LockedOnNBA. You're going to get that free white tech hat. If you are out in the links, this thing looks absolutely perfect for that. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or promo code LockedOnNBA for that free white tech hat. Go grab yourself a pair of Bird Dogs. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
All right, talking worry week here for the Brooklyn Nets with Ben Simmons front and center. Reminder, we did talk about Mikal Bridges to kick off the week. Go to the YouTube channel, go over to Twitter at Doug Norrie, at Adam Armbrecht, at Locked On Nets. Where do you line up on the worry spectrum here, right? Where do you expect the biggest levels of concern to be about this roster? We want to hear from everybody on that as well. The 2 points here. First, on Ben Simmons and the contract. Right now, it's funny to think about it this way, but I actually think there is a world where it could impact them. $40 million on the books for a guy that is underperforming to whatever that benchmark of expectations is this season will affect what the Nets do at the trade deadline too. There are moves that could be made if you envision this team going forward, at least over this and next season, with Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Ben Simmons, Nicholas Claxton, and others, right? If all of a sudden he's tanking, Well, now you're already getting a vision in the short term, what you're not going to be able to accomplish, let alone when we talk about next off season and other decisions that you want to make. That's my first issue that you're going to kind of understand much sooner than later, right? Like the Nets will know maybe within the first month of the season that, oh crap, we still have an underperforming Ben Simmons stuck on our roster.
Yeah, I think we're going to know this one pretty fast. Maybe not completely. I think, let me put it this way. I think we will not understand the full scope of it if it starts off good, only because there was times where it looked okay last season, and then there was still injury stuff in the end, right? So, but if it looks bad to start, it'll be really hard, I think, to envision the way out of it. Now, again, there was times where he kind of fluctuated, went back and forth with this over the course of last season too. So I don't think we're going to be in write-off territory no matter what. But I know for me, it's going to be really tenuous to start the season if it doesn't start off good. What are you going to say?
Now, here's the other quick point before we talk about, if not Ben Simmons, then who, and how that exacerbates the problems for the Nets. You said in the first segment, it makes sense to only say things can only go up from here. What if they go stagnant? What if it's the exact same thing from last season, where there are a couple instances and stretches where, hey, he showed us a little something, but by and large, there's concern, there's a little bit of frustration, there's tentativeness. There is that world where this just goes exactly the same. Now, again, we take a step outside of the worry week. I don't think that that's likely, but the world where like it doesn't get more consistent, where it doesn't become more reliable, where you don't look at Ben Simmons as being a guy, by the way, in the starting lineup. We've talked about positively that he's going to be in the starting lineup healthy to start this year. What if he's not in the starting lineup? Then you start looking around the rest of this roster and saying, who picks up that slack? And the Nets, you can't find a way to build out a roster to safeguard against that when you have that $40 million occupied by his contract.
I just think last season was like what I'm talking about when I say as bad as it is. Like I know there were flashes where it wasn't, but there were flashes only, right? There was like, it was basically a 6-game stretch, maybe a little, and with a few other games thrown in there. But we're talking about a guy who over the course of the season averaged, on some minutes, like less than 6 shots a game. Like that's a disaster. It's a disaster. For this money, like it's a total disaster. If it's looking like that again, even when you factor in the other things, and the other things would have to be completely elite, like the rebounding, the defense, the facilitation through the assists, like the other things would have to be off the charts. The problem with like some of that stuff is like, it's really hard. Like for instance, it's really hard to maintain sort of high assist numbers when you don't take any shots, because you're no threat. When you're not a threat to take any shots, it's harder to dial up assists, right? Like it becomes harder for your game. It just when there's no threat for you on the offense, when the defense is not threatened by your offensive prowess, you're going to be in a hard spot to be an offensive facilitator, because you already have one thing totally taken away from you. So I would say, when I say the base, if it is stagnant, I'm saying stagnant last year was like one of the worst versions that we could have seen of him. Over in the macro, there were times where it looked better, but I think if we all thought back right now, I mean, you and I, and anybody else out there that's watching, every single Nets game, and sometimes more than once, right, over the course of a season, like, what is the first thing you think of when you think of Ben Simmons? Like, right now, what's when you picture Simmons' play from last year, what was it?
Stagnant ball in hand, not driving the lane.
Yeah, okay, right. Or getting to the lane and looking super timid when you get there, right? I would add that timid, one other thing, like
scared. Like, I mean, not to put the big word on it, like scared. Looked like he was playing scared, right? I mean, that's the reality on the offensive end.
Yeah. And look, there was problems like the back, and there's other issues. Like there's a ton going on here. It's not that I'm not even dragging him for it. It's just like the reality was that if it looks like that again, even if it only looks like 10% better than that, I think we're talking about these disaster situations. And again, we've been overwhelmingly positive about him going into this because of what you hear. The players are talking about him publicly in a way that we haven't really heard about him in a long time. That's great stuff, right? All reports from health stuff that, that's being leaked out or just kind of put out there is overwhelmingly positive. That's all great. It's good. There's a rubber meets the road situation that's going to happen with him here, but I just think that, like, I do think eye test will tell us a lot really, really early. And I would be really scared for the next 2 years if it looked like that again. And that would include stagnation from the season before.
And by the way, I think you're right. The way that players are talking about him, the positivity that's coming around him leading up to the season is different than it has been since he's been a Brooklyn Net. And also, last off season, there were positive videos circulating of him in the gym, right? And you see this about healthy or otherwise. Any player. It's happening with Spencer Dinwiddie right now, right? Spencer Dinwiddie working on his late shot clock game, working on his catch and shoot threes, right? It always looks better when it's in
Claxton's
the gym.
Claxton's going to join the 3-point contest according to like what's happening over the summer, right? Like this is just what happens over the summer.
Exactly. Like everybody gets hyped in whatever area that you think you want to see them improve. And unlike some other guys, not Nicholas Claxton 3-point shooting, but the little turnaround jumper we saw at the back end of the season. Hey, let's see that grow a little bit more. There are these incremental things that you point to and say they can improve. I actually think Spencer Dinwiddie falls outside of that spectrum because he is 30 years old and it's hard to just all of a sudden get better in a certain key area. But Ben Simmons, by and large, it's been hype around what could be and then disappointment to what is, right? And that's where I guarantee you by the end of worry week, this is going to be the one that I come back to and go, yeah, this is the highest level one because it's the one that's fraught with the most uncertainty. And as we're discussing here, the highest level of impact on this roster overall for not just this year, but then next year as well.
Oh, and by the way, just compare this like the worry to what we did in last episode with Bridges, where like, oh, the worry is that he just doesn't play as much. Right? Like that was the biggest worry about him was that the Nets actually can't sustain a long stretch of time without Bridges. Like they're going to be, it's already a little dicey. It would be just flat out bad if they didn't have him. With Simmons, it's a totally different, because in that scenario, at least Bridges is still good / great, right? Like there's, with his contract, there's really kind of no downside. With Simmons, there is organizational downside to the point where I don't think actually fans have really factored in. I don't think, and I guess we'll talk about that next, but like there's real sort of like organizational and maybe even like existential issues if Simmons is horrible to start this season.
Coming up here in a second, we're going to discuss not just who replaces Ben Simmons this year on the court if he struggles, but what does it actually mean if he struggles for this version of the organization? Come up in a second. All right, it's the new world famous worry week here on the Locked On Nets podcast. Now, jot this down because we should be doing this every single year, I think, going forward, because we do tend to try to find the positives and look on the brighter side of things, especially since the trade went down. But in talking about Ben Simmons, the contract is a big issue. The on-court play, we were discussing those things. I want to get into who would you replace him and why that's a problem too, right? Specifically to his role. But you just touched on it there at the end of the last segment. If he's bad and the contract is bad, the organization will start looking at everything differently over the next 2 years, which includes Cameron Johnson, which includes Mikal Bridges, and every young player. Like everything will look different, not because Ben Simmons is the most critical player on this roster, but go back to when they had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It was about, and if Ben Simmons can be healthy, it takes this team from here. If you're on YouTube, it's about mid-screen. And then to here, towards the top of the screen, whatever the ceiling is for this team, Mikal Bridges Ben Simmons moves that needle. And if he doesn't move the needle, they're going to think about things differently and how much money they could free up in 2 seasons along with his $40 million contract.
Oh yeah, we can never come back. I mean, that's sorry.
That don't hide the lead here. He would not be back.
And he's, maybe sitting at the precipice of like a career here too. Like I think these are incredibly important 2 years from him, for more than almost anybody else, considering his stature. Like not like everyone's fighting for their lives in the NBA all the time, right? So that's not it. But yeah, like organizationally, if it doesn't work out here for this year and next year, I mean, they're definitely cutting bait, but like next year is is arguably even more problematic because he gets a raise. Like he gets a raise next year. And so you're like looking at
my office. It hasn't been great. We're going to give you a little bit more and then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. You think like a $37.8 million bad Ben Simmons is bad. Wait till it's 40.3 million Ben Simmons. Right. Like, and here's where, so organizationally it'd be such a huge problem. The part where people, and I've seen many people, smart people too, like I float this idea that like the Simmons contract, because it's expiring, has value. I hate to break this to everybody. If you stink and you make there's no value to it. There's no possible way. Just say it slowly to yourself. If a player who is bad makes $40 million a year, they don't have value. Like, it's impossible. Oh, it's the CBA. Oh, the new CBA. Yeah, the CBA does that for guys who can play. Like, you can get off guys who can play his contract a little easier. If you can't play, you are not just shipping this guy off in some huge trade. You are going to have to attach assets. You mentioned Joe Harris. Yeah, the Nets traded Joe Harris. They also had to give up 2 second-round picks just to have the Pistons take him. Like, it was like, hey, we'd love to get off this contract. Pistons like, no problem. What else is coming? Right? And that was to a guy. And Harris, could still, like, guess hit threes. Like, I don't know how much she's going to play. That was for an expiring $20 million a year player, right?
Yeah.
What would need to get attached to Simmons to have a team take him on? By the way, at least, and Harris is a guy that no one, like, kind of looks at one way or the other. They're just like, yeah, it's Joe Harris, like, nice guy, whatever. You also incur the Ben Simmons tag on the trade, which is to say Ben Simmons in some basketball circles is like persona non grata for a guy that anyone even wants on their team because like what he represents or whatever. And so you're just not trading a guy who makes $40 million a year. And I don't care what the CBA says. Feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube. It just does it. There's no world where it computes. It doesn't compute. So if he stinks, they would have to attach one of like their good assets to get off the contract.
Yeah,
that's it. It's not just a money
matcher.
Way, it's a negative asset at that point.
And by the way, and I 100% agree with you. By the way, things come and go, right? You head into a season with X amount of money, and then by the end of the season, in the off season, you have X amount of cap space, and the cap room goes up. Blah blah blah. There's only 2 teams right now that are operating in positive cap space: the Detroit Pistons and the Utah Jazz. Everybody, to whatever degree right now, is operating in some level of negative cap space. So just the functional movement of getting $40 million off your books. We talk about this all the time, even when it's quality players, right? Even the Joe Harris is the example. Well, somebody needs to have the space to take on $20 million of a guy that may or may not have actual on-court value for them. Likewise for Ben Simmons.
What they're saying, when people say this, by the way, they're saying like, oh, he's a good match for a superstar, right? Okay, that's true. Like, that's true in that, like, his money would match a superstar. You will have to pay extra to have them take that back as part of the package, right? So, like, I get the part where it's like, oh, well, the $40 million, mine's a better if a guy wants out. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't need to be explained to me. The part where, like, the other team thinks they're getting anything back, you're going to pay extra plus extra because it's Simmons. Like, Russell Westbrook's contract got traded. Yeah. Until it didn't, right? Like until it did, or like this would be more akin to like the John Wall contract. Like, you know what I mean? Like these things that just can't be moved at a certain point. And that's definitely where Simmons would be.
Another point that you've made in previous, whether it was Ben Simmons or otherwise, but you've always astutely brought up the fact that the $40 million is also buyout wise, right? Sometimes superstars take buyouts because blah, 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 based on where their contracts are and where they are and when they can go get more money somewhere else. There's not a buyout option coming for the Brooklyn Nets and Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is making 38 and change this year and 40 million next year. And whatever he's doing or not doing on the court, he's going to be making 38 and change this year and $40 million next year because those buyouts never function to be valuable to him. You know, in this
Clutch is like he's represented by Clutch. They would never let that happen ever. Like they would never have a buyout happen. The buyouts happen with Kevin Love because they do him a handshake deal. They happen with Blake Griffin. They happen with like Russ. Like they happen with these dudes who have long careers, who are at the tail end of them, that want to just get themselves to a very specific situation, kind of because they have it lined up, right? Like they're lined up to go to our team. They're never buying this contract out ever. So like everyone can stop thinking about that too.
Here's the one other worry week thought for me around Ben Simmons too, because and it stays with the money. Next year, when the Nets only have Ben Simmons, Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith on the books, along with Cam Thomas and Day'Ron Sharpe, but no other really big money, right? Those top 4 guys are going to occupy 40, 60, 80, about 100 million in those 4 players, including Dorian Finney-Smith, because he's making north of 14, 15 million, assuming that he's still here. You have cap holds around the Spencer Dinwiddies of the world. Nicholas Claxton's going to be in there, right? So even if you just say Nicholas Claxton is worth 20, 25 million by current standards, whatever the number ends up being, you're going to be about 125 million if you have Ben Simmons still on the books next year. And the reason why I bring up Nicholas Claxton specifically is it's going to be really hard this is like the organizational problem here in some ways. It's going to be hard knowing that Nicholas Claxton is great and you love him, but he and Ben Simmons share similar deficiencies on the offensive end. So you're going to go into another year where you are handcuffed slightly around how productive you can be, because you're going to have this $40 million guy that cannot play offense for you. And Nicholas Claxton, who maybe has a little bit, certainly attacks and isn't timid around the basket, etc., but he's not your offensive player. So now you run into those issues as well. And we've talked positively before about how some of these different combos can pair together. But if you want to go into next off season and the following off season, say, we can go attract another big name because Mikal Bridges and Cameron Johnson look great on the court, and Nicholas Claxton take that next step forward. There's $40 million holding you back to whatever you want to accomplish. And I just think you can say it looks better and better as you get further away, but it keeps moving the timeline if Ben Simmons is not healthy and productive on the court to the highest possible level at this point of his career.
Yeah, it's just, this is as much as we want to see Bridges continue to ascend, we want to see this team kind of put their best foot forward. There's just no bigger story for the Nets over the next 2 years than this guy. And
okay,
go ahead. And
no, we'll close out on this. I just want to make sure we get to it. It's worry week. We said Mikal Bridges, I think outside of the injury concern, but that's the only thing holding us back from loving everything about Mikal Bridges. Where are you on Ben Simmons and the concern level, right? My concern level on Mikal is a 1 out of 10, that anything's going to really impact how good he can be this year. When it comes to Ben Simmons, at this point, at this moment, I'm at least a 7 out of 10 on the scale of, because there's a number of factors that could bring this thing crashing down.
I was gonna go like 9.5. Like that's only because we're devoid of information. And how could you have it be lower? I don't know how you could even be realistically lower unless you were just the most optimistic person in the world. And maybe I'm cursed with a pessimistic attitude about it. It's more just, I'm just trying to be realistic. It's like, it's very hard to draw a lot of stuff off. The guy has not been good in 2 years. And you're like, oh, it's all been injury. Okay, great. That counts against him. Because I know that's the next thing that comes. The next thing that comes is, well, it's all been injured. That's when I'm saying, hey, guess what? The back injury of all things counts against him in terms of the worry, because backs get re-injured. And so I know that the back being healed is the path for him to being better and more mentally aggressive in whatever he needs to do. It also counts against him in the worry thing. It's like, yeah, he had a back injury for 2 years, man. That counts against you. Sorry. It just does. Yep.
No, 100%. And it's nothing to say about he gets better and gets attacking downhill and then still struggles with the free throw line, which is always going to be a problem, right? He's not a perfect player if healthy, which when we compare him to other guys, even on the Brooklyn Nets, the categories all get checked for the most part. It's just about being productive with consistency. Ben Simmons is a bit of an enigma. So maybe you're right. We should all be a little bit closer to 9 out of 10 until he gets on the court and we see it for 1 day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, right? That's the only time, once we see it with our own eyes, that we can really put real faith and trust into Ben Simmons on the Nets.
Look, I'm a 10 out of 10 about wanting him to be good. So no worries there. I want all the way at the top of the want him to be good scale when it comes to our own rooting interest. Him being, there's one of the best things that could ever happen to the podcast. Look, I hate to tell you how the sausage is made here. When the Nets are good, the podcast numbers go up. I just don't know another way to tell you. So we're always rooting for the Nets to be good. And Simmons being good is the biggest shift the Nets could have in being good this year. If he's good, the Nets will be much better. Point stop. So we're all rooting for it. And on the other side, in terms of where I'm worried, is easily the highest on the worry scale of any of the things we're going to talk about because of the sort of the downside risk it presents if it doesn't go well. Okay, we got some other stuff we're going to get into later in the week. Other things to worry about, get you the late summer stuff where it just kind of get you on the edge, right? We're going to take you on the edge. Don't worry. The rest of the time,
we're edge of your seat thrills here late in August, right?
Yeah, except at the end, it just all falls off a cliff. Next week we'll get back into deciding whether we clip the red cord or the blue cord. Okay, make sure in the meantime you are subscribed to Locked On Nets. Hopefully by the time you listen to this, we're gonna be at 6,000 followers on YouTube. If not, I'm just disappointed in you. You got to go over there and sign up to Locked On Nets over on YouTube. There's going to be stuff happening over there all season long that just doesn't happen on the regular podcast. That's really all there is to it. We do extra stuff on YouTube. The only way to get notified every time of that is to subscribe over on YouTube for Locked On Nets.
If I am worth anything later, I am worth something now. For wheat is wheat, even if people think it is grass in the beginning. Why, that is Vinny Van Gogh.
Oh, Vinny. just reading a lot of stuff about him. Really interesting. I read like a whole career retrospective of him about like the way he thought, and then they left out the whole part where he went totally crazy. I was like, I feel like you left.
Douglas.
It was all about like how you should have the same mindset as him, and I'm like, man, I feel like they left out a huge part of this.
Where's my knife? Because Vincent had a bit of a thought about how to get more productive later in life.
Still incredibly inspiring. Okay, we're gonna get out of here.